Today we're here to discuss which one of Logitech or Trustmaster has the best beginner-friendly sim racing wheel. Over the years I've had the great opportunity to try out different low-end sim racing wheels, both because I had to start somewhere myself and because friends of mine got interested in buying a cheap wheel. Today I'm here to share my experience with you guys so that you can make the best choice for your first sim racing wheel. Hi, my name is Scott and welcome to a new video. This was my first racing wheel, and while I've had many hours on this thing, it is now an ancient piece of history. Today, the two wheels that are on the top of the beginner sim racing market are the G29 and the T300. So we are going to compare these two on price, build quality, the pedals, and finally the force feedback engine. First off, let's begin with the obvious, the price. The T300 is actually 100 to 150 euros more expensive than the G29. And depending on special packages you might order with your T300, like my Ferrari rim for example, that difference might become even greater. So the two wheels aren't exactly on the same market. And realistically, the counter to the Logitech G29 from Trustmaster is actually the T150. But the G29 is, in my opinion, far superior to the T150, both in materials used and in the accuracy of force feedback. So when comparing these two wheels, we actually need to keep this price difference in mind. Both wheels actually have a great price-quality ratio, they just offer different features, so price should not really be a deciding factor when choosing one over the other. Next, let's talk about build quality. Both the T300 and the G29 make use of a mix of plastic and metallic parts on their design. I must say, personally, I've never had any trouble with either of these wheels, but I do see the Logitech offering as this almost indestructible object, while the Trustmaster wheel does require a bit of maintenance over the year. Trustmaster actually gives you more customizability, like the possibility to swap out rims, and with this customizability comes complexity, and complexity introduces some pain points in the design. So you might be required to actually add some oils onto your brake or to screw back some of the parts of the wheel or to use one of these to straighten up your rim. Nothing major, but it is something to keep in mind as your wheel is aging. Let's talk about those pedals I mentioned earlier. This is probably the first element in your setup that you'll want to swap out, but since high fidelity pedals might cost quite a bit of money, you still want to consider a good set as you might be stuck with them for a while. If you're buying a Trustmaster set, make sure to include a 3-pedal set like the T3PA instead of a cheaper 2-pedal model. You'll definitely feel the difference. Both brands work on the same linear positioned based model to understand the user's inputs. The only difference can be found on the brake pedal, where Logitech decided to put extra resistance. This gives a firm feeling when applying brake pressure. Unfortunately, while this adds a lot of immersion into the act of braking, I find it makes it immensely more difficult to find the ideal braking point. If you're planning to be competitive in your sim racing endeavor, I would recommend you picking up the Trustmaster pedals that will still require you to find that ideal braking point, but at least you won't have to do that while applying excessive force. Finally, let's talk about the core of the wheel with its engine. The Logitech uses a gear-driven wheel, while the T300 provides a belt-driven mechanism. Visually, you can see the T300's engine takes up a lot more space. It also gives a lot more torque and gives the possibility for heavier force feedback. Overall, the T300's engine outputs a smoother force feedback while remaining more quiet than the G29. This is, I believe, the area where the price difference is most apparent. I also found the G29's force feedback could feel floaty at times when centering forces weren't high enough. Overall though, I must say the G29 does give you enough information in the force feedback to get a natural driving experience. People who are thinking about drifting in sim racing should definitely pick the wheel with the highest possible torque, as this makes aligning the car a lot easier. But I've found it's possible to get a good result using the G29 by increasing the wheel's gain. So, which wheel should you buy? The Logitech gives a great base product for a ridiculously good price. If you're just dipping your toes into sim racing, unsure whether you'll stick with it, or if you'll just casually cruise around now and then, the G29 is your best choice. It's also the best choice if you're on a budget, with the possibility to even add a shifter for basically lunch money. The T300 caters to people who want a more realistic experience, who are more sure to stick with the hobby and for whom customizability is worthy of the higher price. If you want a wheel that can stick with you for the next 10 years, giving you enough time to save up for high quality upgrades, while still giving you a top of the line experience, the T300 is for you. Which wheel would I recommend though? That's entirely dependent on how sure you are to stick with the hobby. If you're just casually interested in cars and you want something a bit more interesting than a gamepad to race cars around with, use the G29. If you are, however, obsessed with virtual racing cars, then you need the T300. I thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful. Don't forget to subscribe for more sim racing tips. I have a sim racing guide that I'm working on. So if you guys are interested in more information about sim racing, then definitely subscribe to the channel so you will be notified about that. I finally also want to give a big shout out to my cousin who let me borrow his G29 for review. And then I'll see you space racers next time. Goodbye.